Hey guys, welcome back to Ask Jim. As you may have noticed, I'm not Joel, but I'm here with Jim, Heidi and David, who are from Securities and Antennas. We're here to answer your questions, so we'll get ready to go. So, as I said, I am not Joel. He's decided that hosting a weekly web show for an hour once a week has become a bit too strenuous.
So he's gone off to Peru.
Up to
Machu Picchu, climbing mountains, and generally making himself obnoxious over there too. So
for 3 weeks, so it was a bit too stressful. But if you do want to hear a bit more from Joel, we're doing a weekly podcast on a Monday. You talked about climate change this week, Jim.
I did, yes.
Spend a good time talking about.
I'm actually quite the green warrior, it appears, when you interview me. So there I am.
Indeed.
But not a greenie.
Not a greenie. We'll make that very clear.
I'll explain why. You have to read it.
You do. You have to watch it. It's available where all good podcasts are found. Finally, yesterday, Jim, we had a new division launch. We've been talking about it for months now. Jim's Home Fresh has finally, the website's gone up.
Yep.
So do you want to talk a bit about Home Fresh or?
No, it's good. Home delivery of fresh fruit and veg. We're going to be a client at the office. I'm going to get a fruit basket in every Monday, and we're going to divide it amongst our staff because I reckon fruit is good stuff. I love fruit.
It's brilliant.
Go with fruit.
And finally, last thing I've got, Jim's Cleaning was up for some awards for the top 10 franchises in Australia. Mm-hmm. They got in the top 10 for brand, lifestyle, and support. So all three categories that they went up for, they got, which is brilliant. So well done, Jim's Cleaning. All right, now enough of me. First question. We had this come through earlier in the week. Now, I'll go for all three. Oh, sorry. Actually, before we go, this is Heidi and David from Antennas and Security. Heidi is the
General Manager
of, and David is the
franchisor, I suppose. Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know. I never quite know that. What do
you call yourself?
Yeah. All right. Well, in our terms, he's the divisional franchisor and also the regional franchisor for most of the franchisees. Right. So it's very important. If you upset this guy, you're in trouble if you're in the division.
All right. So first question for the night.
Yeah.
All right. For all three of you. All right. You start your life over knowing everything you know today. What would you do different?
What would I do? My whole life.
You go back to day one. You know everything that you know now.
As a baby.
Yep.
I'd be a very unusual baby.
You know a lot, but what would you do differently throughout your life?
Baby, Jim. You wouldn't be a good-looking baby.
I was a gorgeous kid. I just got ugly in my old age. Thank you very much, David. And look at who's pointing the finger, hey?
I'm just saying,
he's got a beautiful wife, but apart from that, it's about the best looking thing about him. Sorry.
As a baby, it wouldn't be good.
Yeah. So would you change? What would you do differently?
Well, first of all, I'd do nothing differently up to 10 years ago because I wouldn't unmake any of my children. All right, that's absolute basic. So until my last son was conceived, I wouldn't change anything in that sense. But if you're talking back to the age of 18, the biggest thing I would do is I would find God. Yep. I was an atheist for a long time, and that was a lonely period. And when I became a Christian at the age of 28, I've also done a website on that one.
We do. That's coming out next week.
Interviewed by Joel, who is a militant atheist. So it makes an interesting interview. A Christian interviewed by an atheist who was telling me why he's an atheist and why he shouldn't be Christian. So it was kind of like a discussion. But I would find God. At 18, I was a very militant atheist agnostic. It took me nearly 10 years to find God, and that made a big difference. And that's the biggest change I'd make in my life.
Heidi?
Well, I mean, apart from the obvious of knowing all the Tats Lotto numbers and putting the right numbers on and becoming a multi-millionaire. Well, you've got to think of that one. I probably wouldn't have given up either my swimming or my water polo career. I probably would have followed that through a bit more.
Yeah, could have been on the Australian team in the end, maybe.
Not for swimming, but maybe for water polo.
All right, and David?
That's very difficult. I'm reasonably happy with what's happened to me, so I don't know whether I'd change very much. No? It's a really challenging thing, isn't it, to think about what you would change. No, I can't think of anything I'd like to change. No?
You make all kind of business mistakes, though. I mean, I've done so many stupid things in business.
Yes.
Some of which are in my book, in the books that I've written, like just different enterprises, different things you try, which in retrospect you look back and think you're an idiot. Why on earth did you do that? Or why didn't you pick up earlier that it was a mistake? Like trade exchanges, for example, which has really been bad for me.
But sometimes those mistakes are what you learn from, and if you don't make the mistake, you don't learn from it.
Yeah, but the whole idea of what Jake's saying is if you could know now all the mistakes you've made and go back and not make them in the past, I mean, if I knew what I know now when I started off, gyms effectively, which is 1982, like 37 years ago, it would have taken me half as long to get back here because mostly it's learning.
Yes,
You've got to develop the business, but all the stupid, dumb things you do wrong.
No, it's very true. In my business career, I spent a lot of time manufacturing, and I really believed that we could manufacture things in Australia and I could export them overseas. And I spent a lot of time trying to set up a business where I could manufacture in Australia and export overseas against the growing tide of Asian imports. And obviously it didn't work. It was just very difficult. It was a successful business just the same, but that whole idea, I should have jumped ship there a bit earlier.
You made your money on retirement homes and stuff, didn't you?
Well, not some, but the actual the furniture business I was in was a good business, and I was successful in that. But the retirement villages, independent living, not aged care, is what I did and still do, and that's a good business to be in. Yeah.
It's very tough. Manufacturing, of course, has been a horror, faced with Chinese competition and the rest. But even retail's got a lot of problems with it. You're crowded by the huge stores and the shopping centres. They got to pay ridiculous rents, and you can lose out in a minute if they want to. I always think the service industry is fantastic by comparison. I reckon it's incredibly lucky that I went into that industry from the beginning. I didn't know what I was doing. It was just something because I was I was broke, and the only thing I knew how to do to make money was mowing lawns. I mean, it was accidental, and I had no idea what the potential was. But you look back and you say, wow, was that a good choice? Even though I didn't have any reason for making a good choice. Sometimes you're just lucky.
Yeah, well, I think one thing you picked up on, that because you've got a good model and you're able to do it, my interest in franchising came because in the furniture industry, we dealt with people like 40 Winks and Captain Snooze and so on. And what I saw with that is a lot of people being very successful in franchising. A lot of those guys have been extremely successful through being with a good franchise. Now, so there's good and bad, of course, but in the furniture industry, you saw that the retailers, in particular, in this very difficult competitive environment, the good franchises, the well-run franchises have been very successful. And, Harvey Norman, Captain Snooze, 40 Winks, those kind of groups. So that interested me to get involved in your business because, I think a well-run franchise concept is very good for everyone involved, and I think it's proven for me, my involvement with your business. And I think you've got a fantastic brand and a fantastic model.
We see that in the service industry clearly. It's the stat we often quote. You look at the independents in the cleaning business, for example, where proper official statistics show that 95% fail in their first year. With us, the figure is 11%, latest figure. So it's a huge difference based on support, on training, on joint advertising, on everything. We're coaching franchisees all the time as to what they should do better, why they're making a mistake. And there's such this huge accumulated wisdom that we can say, okay, the reason your business is not working is because of this and this and this.
Yes.
And the only thing they've got to do is to listen, which mostly they will. If people won't listen, they'll still make their mistakes and they won't succeed. But generally speaking, if you're prepared to listen to what you're told and follow the system, it actually does work very well.
Yeah.
One of the things I see in our division in antennas, and I'm relatively new in it, only a few years, but what I see is the guys are learning not just from us, but learning from each other, and that's a hugely powerful model, isn't it? Where you've got successful people, all spreading out and spreading ideas and sharing ideas and knowledge, and that's been one of the very successful. Like antennas is an amazingly successful business, I believe. It's so consistent over 20 years. It's amazing the consistency of the business, and the people stay in it. It's the longest, I believe. I think our guys stay longer than any other division.
Test and Tag's very good too, actually. So, but you do have pretty good. But they make good money.
Yeah.
The fees tend to be on the high side because there's a lot of leads going through, but it's one of the better earners, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And you can certainly build your own business out of it without having after the 10, 15 year mark.
The story of antennas is very interesting too, and it shows the value of having the right model. Andrew Park, the founder of the division, who was actually a franchisee with Mr. Antennas, giving half his income to them, and he decided this wasn't good, and he came across to Jim's and got involved in the founding of Jim's Antennas, and then built it up into this business, which actually completely crushed Mr. Antennas. One of the main reasons, of course, being that our fees are so much more reasonable.
Yes.
I mean, we're one of the highest fees. I think your average fee is probably about 12% in terms of turnover, but theirs was 50%. So who'd pay 50 when you can get it for 12?
Yes. Yeah. No, it's proportionate. I mean, you pay more fees when you do more business, so it's a good model.
It's the lead fees to take it up because they need, like, you know, a typical guy gets like 60 leads a month or some crazy number.
No.
Average 30.
Average 30, is it?
Yeah.
Oh,
But
right.
what's very interesting is that the longer people are in general, they take less leads, and they don't need. It's an interesting model because when they start, you know, we've had a guy start in Sydney and he's taken a massive number of leads this month. I thought, surely he can't want all that, but he's so happy that he's getting so much work.
I got an email from him actually just now. I just responded to it today.
Did you?
Yeah, he said his fees are very high, but he's going very well.
Yeah, I mean, how can he do all that work? Because he's converting well as also, but it's just an interesting. So some of the guys
Great customer service too.
Yeah.
Really, really good track record, which
He's
is
a
very
really
important.
great guy.
Yeah, but a lot of the guys been in for a long time. They don't take leads at all. So you
So
know,
it averages out. Yeah. I know,
So we might have some guys sitting up here on 70 and then other guys sitting down here on maybe 10. So yeah,
They build up
average.
a network of referrals and so forth, which
Yeah.
of course belongs to them. Because once they've picked up a job, it's their job forever. They never pay another lead fee for it.
yes.
So, brilliant question. Fantastic sidetrack. I'm not sure whether we can actually remember what the starting question was, but brilliant.
What will we change?
What would we change was the question to start with. Got a few people come through the feed. Caleb saying, hey, I like the music. Thank you, Caleb. David McDonald from Jim's Antennas Horsham says, I've been climbing a 50 feet concrete grain elevator today, living the dream. It's fantastic to hear.
Excellent.
I believe this is Eric from Jim's Mobile Cafe. Says, Jim, I've been helping out Ricky with her dog wash appointment since she started 3 weeks ago. I was wondering if it's possible to show the lead date to the client on the client list home screen, as this would be a lot easier than having to open each one to see what the dates and to see the date and when the lead came in. I was also wondering if there are any plans to include an appointment calendar when you have clicked onto the client. This would be a great option to add.
To add to which? What is it?
So I think to the booking system through when you get a lead.
Which system, what are you talking about? Jim's Online? What's he talking about?
I'll get him to comment. Ricky, Eric, sorry, just let us know.
It might be good,
system.
Eric, just to give me an email and show me what you mean, because it's a bit hard for me to understand without knowing what you're referring to. But if you show me what you're talking about, or if so with the dog wash person, who was that?
That's his wife, Ricky.
Yeah, if Ricky would like to send through to see what the problem actually is and show me how it appears, just jim@jims.net. Just send it to me, and I will have a look at it and take it up with IT. We've got a design people there looking at the way things work. We've got a guy called Alex in particular who's very good, and he designs everything to make it exactly what we want, and then they go and program it, which is a good change. So if you could, Eric, if you could get Ricky to send to me what the issues are, and we'll have a look at it.
Yes, that's just jim@jims.net.
Yeah,
if you want to do that.
Jim's at Jim. Only one Jim.
One
thank
Jim.
you.
There's only one Jim. All right.
Actually, quite a few.
There's only one that matters.
But if you
Only
say
one that
Jim@jims.net, you'll get me.
Yeah. Jim's Mowing of Bay of Plenty Hawks says, evening guys, tuned in from New Zealand, which is great. Jim's Pool Care says, hello everyone. And then we had another question. So Cameron Sales says, what is the biggest tip when it comes to starting a business?
Starting a business. Be passionate about customers. I mean, I know I've said this a million times, but if you really care about delighting and amazing your customers, everything becomes so much easier. And we know too that franchisees with great ratings are far more likely to survive the first year. Those who leave in the first year tend on average to have a much lower rating than those who don't. If you look at people who are making good income, they tend to be those with the best customer service ratings. So look after your customers first and foremost. Now, when you're talking about a business in general, that's probably there. You've got to obviously watch the bottom line. Our feeling in gyms is that we're not cheap as chips. We amaze the clients with service, but we charge properly for it. That's a very important principle too. I'm not saying there's not a market at the other end, but it's not one I want to be part of because it's very, very hard to succeed. And seriously, if you want to be in business, if you want to get a franchise, it doesn't have to be gyms.
Antennas.
Well, I'd agree. One thing that I think in starting a business, you have to be prepared to have a long haul, like a long-term view, because it's very difficult to start. to get going, and that's the greatest. So you financially and mentally, you need to be prepared for that period where you're not going to get anywhere because you're learning, and that's the reason why people buy franchises, of course, because you know, like, I'm going to plug ours, but of course, but if they start like this guy we were just talking about before, straight in the very first week, the very first month, he's completely busy. He wants to work 7 days a week because he's keen. He's getting 7 days a week, as much work as he wants, and
he's doing about 11 hours a day.
He's successful day one.
Yeah.
You know.
I would also say, if you're not part of a franchise, try to get together with people who are already in the business. For example, if you want to start a gardening business and a mowing business, find people who've already doing it and ask their advice. Like, become part of an association or a group. And there's a guy in my church actually who's coming to me all the time, and I'm always been coaching him on how to build his business. He's done all right actually. He's still only part time after a few years, but having someone to talk to about it helps, because obviously I know a bit about the lawn mowing business. So find yourself a network of some kind. Franchise is good. If not, be part of an association. And there's some independent lawn care association people around you can join up with, for example. And every industry has the same thing.
It's an interesting idea, Jim. Yeah. They could call you if they want to start a mowing business, because they call you and get some advice.
No, only if he's in my church.
All right. Sal John, who I think is a Jim's Plus, says, "Hey guys, always tunes in, which is great." Shaylee Cooper says, "Enjoy watching. Glad you're enjoying." Next question we had come through from Sophia, and it was, "What do you work towards in your free time? What goal are you sort of working towards in your free time, or what are you doing?"
Mate, especially my free time. If you mean free time not actually involved in gyms, my major interest is scientific research. I have an institute, a psychology institute, and we've got a research program going which is looking at ways of using the science of epigenetics and biochemistry to mainly to treat mental illness. And we've got some very good experiments done with rats and stuff. So I'm hoping next year we're launching a very much larger program. We're putting at least $1 million a year into it, hoping to get some grants from the government, which I think we can. And that's my passion as far as non-gyms work is concerned. But otherwise than that, family. I think raising children is one of the noblest and best things you can ever do in your life. And I spend a lot of time with my kids. When I finish tonight, I'm going to take them all out to an Indian restaurant, which will be fun. Nice. And that's important too. You've got to have a purpose to live. I don't believe in just living for the sake of fun, because I think living for purpose is more fun than anything else.
David, what do you sort of work towards in your free time?
It's a challenge. If you've worked, as I have, you work all your life, you become work-oriented. And I retired once and found I got bored. I mean, I didn't know what to do. So I went back and got involved in businesses again. But
retirement is death.
Yes.
I am not in favour of retirement. I am 67 and I'm just getting started. I'm just figuring out how to do this thing. You think I'm going to quit it? No way. Another 20 years, then I'll be dead, maybe. But not if I can do anything about that too.
Yeah, good, Jim. I'm with you.
I like that scientific research.
Yeah.
Well, there's some very interesting studies. I'm looking at New Scientist and The Economist just in recent times. There's some very good stuff about treatments to turn back aging.
Yes.
You know that experiment they did where they linked two mice together. I think they were two mice or rats. And they linked an old mouse and a young mouse and linked them so their blood circulated, which is a particularly horrible experiment, and they didn't like it very much, I can tell you that. But the interesting thing was that the young mouse became much older, and the older mouse became much younger. And what they've done is they've identified some of the compounds that were actually floating around in the young mouse's blood that seem to have the effect, and they're trying those.
So we could drain Jake.
Yeah. and keep you going.
Just attach you.
I don't think I'd want his blood. Sorry, I'd get a better quality of blood elsewhere. They have done experiments where they're replacing blood, but that's a little bit ghoulish and
that doesn't work.
It's got some problems. But if they can work out what's in the young blood that's having the effect, it could have a distinctly rejuvenating effect. And there's other things going on right now which are really interesting. A lot of these high-tech billionaires, they want to live forever, so they're really working hard on this problem. And I am 20 years' time, maybe 120, who knows? Not Death is just one more obstacle to overcome, if possible.
Yeah, you definitely.
I enjoy my life very much, and I'll keep going.
You definitely don't want my blood. It's full of fast food and all other junk. So they'll kill you quicker. So you want to stay right.
Well, if I get desperate, I'll come and get some for you.
All right. All right. Now we've never said no to a question on this show, and we did have a very bizarre one. It took me about 5 minutes to work out the answer myself. But here is the question: you've been given an elephant. You can't give it away, and you can't sell it. What do you do with the elephant?
You can't sell it.
It's a bizarre question, I know.
Who would like to rent an elephant? I've got a very good elephant.
You can rent it technically. So it does not selling. So you could rent out an elephant for parties.
I will try and work out a way to rent the elephant to somebody. I don't know that my backyard is quite big enough to support elephantine pursuits, but can't give it away. Can't sell it. Yeah, I reckon. We'd like to rent an elephant. I mean, I've got one.
Well, a circus. You could find a circus.
So now you're starting a whole circus because of one elephant. It's just.
How about
free now?
How about Jim's rent an elephant? We could start up a new division.
Would be a good one.
All to do with renting elephants, and you could go into giraffes and hippopotamuses and all kinds of things.
One thing that would be really good would be to put a sign on it.
Yeah,
because the elephant walking. If you imagine, people drive bikes and things around with signs on, but if you walked an elephant through the city,
you could use it as advertising.
That would be people would look at that, wouldn't they?
Jim's antennas 131546 on an elephant.
Yeah.
You might get arrested for walking an elephant.
You could use the elephant to get up on the roof to do the antenna.
Well, we could also say, look, use Jim's antennas, or we'll have an elephant crush you to death. I mean, you can think of lots of creative uses for an elephant if you really think about it.
Oh dear. All right.
So was there an answer to that question?
No. It's just a question. I was
going to say I feel like I'd release it because that's not giving it away or selling it.
Right. So again, another loophole is so just release it into the wild and let it.
Well, maybe not in the city, but
in Brooklyn, let the elephant go. I mean, actually, there's a thing on someone took an elephant to the footy once, and remember that? Have you seen that thing?
No, I don't think
they took it to when AFL game, North Melbourne were playing, and they took an elephant into the ground, and it ran around, went crazy in the. Anyway.
Oh, right.
Well, it's like the elephants have their uses. It's like that famous stunt that Dick Smith did, where he said he was going to fly a jumbo under Sydney Harbour Bridge. He actually said, I'm going to put a jumbo under. So all the press got there ready to see this aeroplane go flying under Sydney Harbour Bridge, and an elephant went down the raft. I wish I had his flair for publicity, which I most certainly don't.
We could be well past 4,000.
Other thing too, of course. I mean, depends, what state the element's in, but you could always. I mean, is there a market for elephant steak? It doesn't say you can't eat an elephant.
No, you could.
I'm very sure they're a protected species.
Barbecue the elephant.
Barbecue the elephant? I mean, why not? It doesn't say you can't eat the elephant.
No, you could eat.
It could be a bit tough, but then again, marinate it strongly, and you could fry it up. I mean, chops and steaks and all kinds of things. I mean, what would they taste like?
They still have my husband turning it into jerky.
I'm not much of a meat eater myself, but I'm sure I could find people who want to eat an elephant.
We asked it around the office. One person said that they'd farm it for the ivory, so you could just.
It's not supposed to happen these days, though, because
it's definitely outlawed.
Not a good idea. Even there's a big struggle between different parts of Africa where they've got some areas where they look after them very well and they want to be able to farm the ivory, and there's other parts where there's massive poaching problems. And the trouble is, if you have a legal trade in ivory, then it supports the poaching. So that's a big conflict going on. So there's a lot of politics in the elephants.
Yeah. So it's just, as it turns out, more trouble than it's worth. So don't get given an elephant that you can't sell.
Actually, also, elephants are very good for making jokes about.
Are they?
Do you know how you can tell, Jake, whether there's an elephant in the fridge?
How?
There's footprints in the butter.
Yeah, come on, Jim.
It's terrible.
Come on, Jim.
We cut Jim's joke. It wasn't polling well.
No, even better than that.
Kids wouldn't like that one.
How do you fit 4 elephants in a mini minor in a very small car?
How?
You put 2 in the front seat, 2 in the back. Okay. Now, how do you fit an elephant in the fridge? I've already asked you. How do you fit 2 elephants in the fridge? How can you find out if there's 2 elephants in the fridge?
Is there more footprints on the butter?
There's 2 sets of footprints in the butter. Okay. How would you know if there was 3 elephants in the fridge?
I'm not sure.
Because there's 3 sets of footprints in it. You're not catching on, Jay.
I'm wondering how long this joke will go on. Yeah.
How can you tell if there's 4 elephants in the fridge?
Is there 4?
No, because there's a mini miter parked outside.
Oh.
So I told you elephants have their uses.
Yeah.
Even though telling extremely bad jokes, there's a whole lot more to I could tell. But I think we'd lose all our watches if I tried this.
All right. Now, in the feed again, we've got a fair few people watching now. John O.C. has said, ordinary looking bloke on the far right. The old guy. Don't know who's talking about, me or you. Depends on whose right you are.
Very amusing. Very amusing.
Yeah. It's our right.
He's got more hair than me. That's one thing. That's not saying very much, though, is it, John?
That's our friend Johnny.
Johnny?
Yeah, friend.
Joel Kleber has said hola from Cusco. So he's in Cusco now.
Cusco.
Wow.
So he's doing a fair bit of travelling. Aaron has said, please stop. So he didn't love the joke. Aaron.
He doesn't love the joke.
Didn't like the joke.
It's not very nice.
No, it's a bit rude. It's a bit rude. Graham Hamilton has said, g'day from Jim's Antennas, West Mackay. 8 years in and still going strong. The thing I would like to change, I would have liked to have started Jim's much earlier than I did, which is a comment we get a lot. A lot of people say the once they've been in for a while, they should have done it 5-10 years ago.
I get the most wonderful. I have this thing now where I ring franchisees on their anniversaries, 10, 15, 20, 25 years. I had a wonderful conversation with a guy from Mowing in Queensland. And he said, I work 4 days a week, Monday to Friday. I knock off every day at 12. I've got 2 workers, and we make $200 an hour. And he said, it's the best thing ever. Because he said I could make a lot more money, but I spend time with my kids. I take them to sporting events. I pick them up from school. He said, it's just an incredible lifestyle. And that to me is wonderful. Really is wonderful. And so people say, I wish they'd done it so long ago.
Now, keep going through the feed. Michael J. Ribbons has said, do you have a charity or donation towards poverty causes, e.g. World Vision? Do you do much charity work or any donations?
No. I have two outlets for my money. One is I pay tithing as a Christian, which is God's command. And the second thing is my research. Because the implications of my research is that the reason for poverty is to do with character, to do with psychology. People become wealthy because they have a kind of attitude of mind, either as an individual or as a nation, which makes them very, very good at engineering, at business, at innovation, or whatever. Now, what my research is doing is looking at the root causes of that. And if we could work out what they were, it would be quite possible to say to somebody in poverty, well, okay, you've got certain kind of character that you're not very good at doing things like, say, taking a long-term interest. What if there was a treatment that would help you to be a lot more long-term thinking, a lot more hardworking? Would you be interested? Now, kids will take things like Ritalin, which are short-term effective, but very, very destructive in the long term. What if there was a treatment that could actually help people to become the kind of person they always wanted to be? And so somebody could suddenly become hardworking, dedicated, responsible, all the rest of it. Now that would cure poverty in a way that no possible event, no trillions of dollars could achieve that. And we're talking about a few $1 million with the research. So the implications are quite extraordinary. And so much of poverty is also related to things like mental illness and things like addiction to drugs and alcohol and so forth. So much poverty is driven by that. If we could really work out effective ways of treating that, that would do more for poverty. So I take the person. If you ask me one person I admire most in the world, it's Bill Gates. And the Gates Foundation is an incredible thing because what he's done, instead of saying I've got this money, I'm going to spray it around to every cause that catches my eye, he's going to say I'm going to figure out the best way I can use this money to achieve the maximum good. So, for example, does a lot of work with vaccination of kids in third world countries. And, the Gates Foundation has saved millions of lives. It's an extraordinary achievement because Gates, and he's now full-time working on this, he's taken the attitude, I will figure out where money is best spent, and he's made giving scientific. And that's my goal too. I haven't got the Gates billions. I wish I did.
No.
Not for myself. I wouldn't live any different, but to be able to look at where I can do the most good with my contribution. And I actually find that very easy to say no to everything else. People approach me about cancer, and they're all kinds of things, and they're all great causes. World Vision is wonderful. I went to a World Vision study in China, in Yunnan province, many years ago, and what they do is amazing. But I still think that's the mission that I have, is my research, and that's where I can personally contribute the most.
Do you have any strong charities that you align yourself with? Anyone you want to plug? Or?
Not really. I think RSPCA, SCAR, any animal sort of thing. I'm
big fan of. Yeah.
I work with a group which is it's almost like a franchise. It's a concept of a group called Social Venture Partners, where we support social enterprises. And one thing that I've seen and had experience with people who, like myself, who've got a bit of business experience, we help young startups that are in all sorts of things. I mean, I'm working with an autism group at the moment, and we've got a youth suicide group. But what I've found fascinating with that is there's lots of young people, not necessarily young people, generally young, who've got really amazing ideas but have no idea how to form an organisation that can actually develop. And so I'm very enthusiastic about that, because I think that there's thousands of people doing amazing things, and lots of them are doing with very small amounts of money. So money, my view is that my time is probably worth more than my money, but I'm happy to give. I give a little bit of money if I do. I do want to give money, but it's very difficult, isn't it, giving money, because you think, oh, really, is it going to where I think it's going, or So that's no. So I think the whole charity thing is something young people are much more interested in it, aren't they, today than people have been in the past, I believe. So it's something we all should be involved in.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Interestingly enough, they found, when talking about happiness, which you discussed in the past, that actually giving money and giving your time and helping other people is the number one best thing you can do with money to achieve personal happiness and in your own life. So
I agree with that.
It's a great thing. I think that anybody in my kind of position who's giving away less than they're actually spending to live has really got very twisted priorities.
So next question, we'll go back to the cards. And this was originally for Jim, but we'll go to all three. You can maybe do one each. So what are 3 concerns that you have for the Jim's group in the future?
3 concerns.
Well, so we can do one each. Any big concerns, sort of, things going forward? Is there a point that you're worried that we're going to hit?
Biggest concern I probably have, which I think about the most, is succession. What's going to happen after I'm gone? Now, I'm probably around the next 20 years, at least in some form or other, but I'm very concerned that Jim's doesn't get taken over by something like what happened to Retail Food Group, who takes what was basically some fairly strong brands and they go in and say, how can we get the most cash out of these people? And they screw people into the ground and they destroy the businesses. That is my greatest fear by far. So a lot of thought goes in to me, and a lot of discussion about the kind of people I can trust, not only who has the competence, but have the ethics. People like I've got a wonderful finance advisor, Marcus Koch, who's a great guy, great, strong Christian, incredibly brilliant at business, great business coach and guru, but his ethics are wonderful. My daughter, Jasmine, is great. I've got a son who's a lawyer who I hope will take a role someday. So that's my biggest concern. What happens after I'm not around to steer things? Because every day you make decisions that are based on ethical reasons. It's so easy when you've got a business like mine to do things that would make you money, but that would hurt somebody and it wouldn't be right. You've got to have somebody who always thinks, what's the right thing to do? Because in the long term, that's what's best for the business too.
Yeah, keeps it going. Heidi, David?
I guess what I fear probably more from our franchisees and prospective franchisees coming to the business is what is the longevity of antennas in this business? We're seeing a lot more streaming and things like that. But as we know, antennas is still growing. Every single house is still getting an antenna. A lot of the places that were fibre optic, that's actually being shut down now, and that system's been given to the NBN, and now all these houses need to get antennas as well. So there's that fear that I think that prospective franchisees might have about our business that we certainly don't have. We believe that antenna work will still keep growing and growing for the next foreseeable future.
Yeah, so with antennas, and I think I could only agree with that. In the big picture, it is a critical thing with Jim, because it's all about Jim basically, and I think the principles are very powerful, though, that have been embedded in the organisation, and hopefully that can go on. But that, in the long term, for gyms to keep growing, there are some big challenges around the branding and around the competition and so on, and particularly opening up into different areas. We're starting off trying to grow security at the moment, and we need to be sure that the Jim's brand is suitable for these high tech, more technical and more professional type areas. It's very successful in the services, in some of the services, but in other services can it. So that's my concern, is that the brand and the Jim's model keeps growing to take in more and more of a greater variety of services, and I'm sure it is going to happen. It will happen, and but Mike, I do have the same concern that Jim does, because he's been a very significant leader and developed something, and on a day-to-day basis, I can see, because he deals with problems every day, which I see even with individuals in our division, that he's got I think a very good manner of dealing with specific problems. And to find someone else who's prepared to do that, I don't know whether we're going to find it. It's not going to be that easy. No. Yeah. I mean, I don't do a lot of things very well, but in terms of keeping in contact with people also, I mean, I've got dozens of people every day contacting me about this and that, and that's an ability to be able to respond to them fast and give advice and give guidance and make things happen. It'd be difficult to find someone to take that role, I must say. Yeah, it wouldn't be possible. It'd have to be a group somehow, But anyway,
there's a big PR advantage too. You actually got Jim, who's the guy on the trailer with the beard, but no beard, of course, who's you can talk to. I mean, it's the most common question our franchisees get asked: is there really a Jim? Well, once I'm dead and gone, if I do die, I'm not giving up on that one. There was a Jim, but he's gone. All right.
Yeah.
Jim Jr.
And John has agreed with you, Heidi. It's fair to say antennas is just not about TVs. Whether it continues to expand to be 4G and 5G antennas and receivers, and will continue to be around, I'm sure. So
you've got a bit of a problem with the name too, because antennas is a bit old school, but in actual fact, these guys are digital specialists. So if you want anything done around the house, all the cabling for our units here, it was all done by Jim's Antennas. So they do an enormous amount of stuff. I should get Jim's Antennas to come and have a look, because I can't get the sound out of my TV. There's a bit of a problem with it, and it's to do with because we can't get good audio out on the headsets. I know quite well. I'm a bit stingy, but if I can get Jim's Antennas in, I'm sure they could fix the problem.
We're not the cheapest.
Not the cheapest. Yeah, but I know that you guys. I should get you in. We've got these sort of headsets that link up, but they go squeal like that. It's just very annoying. And so
you almost certainly got them connected incorrectly, Jim. You don't strike me as the most high tech.
No, I'm about the most low tech person. If I want something done technical, I ask my 16-year-old daughter Sylvia. She knows so much more than me. She's good.
David McDonald has said antennas is not just free to air, it's satellite, internet, 4G, 5G, fixed wireless, CCTV, TV installs and home theatre.
It should be the fastest growing division we have. I was just talking to these guys about that today. It really should be exploding. There's so much demand for it.
We have introduced the name of Jim's Digital as well, but antennas is what we're known for.
It's such a well-known brand
as
well.
It's 20 years. It's an incredibly embedded brand in terms of the way business comes through Google and so on. It's very difficult to replace.
Maybe it's just a second identity, like you've got Jim's Security, which is going all right. You've got 9. I know it's not growing as fast as we'd like, but I do believe Jim's Digital in the future is going to be the way to go.
Yes. Yeah.
Like dual branding or something like that. I just don't. I mean, even I didn't know what. I was surprised at what your guys have done. I just didn't know the antennas guys did this, but of course you do. It's the same thing. Anything to do with wiring or internal connections or anything. I mean, that's what your blokes are really good at.
It is. It is hard to get that across to the public, which is why we have the tagline, I guess, more than antennas. Yeah. It's pushing that out and
Jim's Digital, I reckon maybe in co-branding, putting 2 signs on the, like the way that Test and Tag has got Jim's Fire Safety too as a second brand, because they do testing and tagging, but they also do a whole lot of other things, like they'll look at exit lights and they'll make sure your fire extinguishers are correct and all the safety stuff is in place. And people don't think of that when you think of Test and Tag, but these guys do all that sort of stuff too. It's just getting people to change the mental model.
Yeah.
Yeah. Aaron Collinson has jumped in with a good comment. Branding is key. Radio parts, haven't sold a radio in a while, I reckon. So, you know, there is sort of that argument for sort of keeping the brand the same. I mean, it's what people know. Eric has said Jim's antennas and digital, but we'll see what happens. I know we were out with the video crew was out with Jim's antennas recently. We did quite a few things. So we did speakers installed, TV mounts. We did
antennas and digital might have some point to it. You know, we've done that in mowing because we've got in certain areas like in Tasmania, it's not just Jim's mowing; it's Jim's mowing and gardening. I was having a look at the figures there, and they do seem to get slightly more gardening leads than elsewhere. So maybe there's a possibility in that.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it's got to change gradually as people rebrand their vehicles and so forth, maybe. And some graphics that actually show.
I thought Jim's antennas and home theatre or something. Digital home.
That's a bit narrow though.
Yeah.
We have had home theatre in the past, but digital, just everything.
It means different things to different people is the challenge.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It could be sort of digital media. It could be. So it is quite ambiguous. So it's a tough one. It's a.
But it's funny though because antennas sounds a bit old school, but it's in fact it's in the centre of the biggest explosion of growth. You talk about the Internet of everything and everything having chips in it like your fridges and everything. So. That's the future, and antennas is right in that position.
Yeah, and the phone and the data.
It sounds like old school, but it's in fact the most up-to-date new school one there is, even more than say Jim's computer services.
Yeah, so it's a real head scratcher. But so thanks for that question. Warren Birch has said, how do people go from working full time and having bills to pay to a franchise and having more bills to pay, even though you have a mortgage?
Well, that's why you have a franchise. I mean, we are punching ourselves tonight, aren't we? But honestly, the biggest problem is not so much that people go into business and they're hopeless. They don't know what to do for a start. But then one of the biggest problems is having enough work. Yeah. So we have a system where, first of all, most franchisees get enough work from the beginning because of the system. And if they don't, they can do this thing called pay for work guarantee where they go and offer freebies. So, for example, I was talking to a Jim's battery guy today who's a bit short for work in Sydney. So I said, okay, why don't you go and talk to all the franchisees in Sydney and offer them free battery checks? Go to the meeting. So I actually emailed the franchisor, the mowing franchisor, Chris Hansen, and he said, yeah, come to the meeting. So he goes to the meeting and does free battery checks for all the franchisees. The franchisor pays him for that.
Okay.
But of course, out of that, you've also got some potential batteries, and they all know him, and he's got his business card and stuff, and they start referring work. So that kind of thing that we can do for people to get them going, that is the toughest thing in business, learning how to do it, but also building up the business. Because in the end, if you're great, you'll get plenty of work. But it's that beginning stage of poverty and starvation that's the problem.
If you look at in our division, because we've got lots of work, more work than we've got guys, and we don't take people on unless we've got work in their area. So we've never had someone start that doesn't get work. It's never happened.
No,
I don't believe it's. Well, in some divisions, there's even worse than antennas. Like fencing's about 60% unserviced, so there's never been a case ever where anybody's had to do paperwork guarantee that I know of, anyway, because there's so much work. And the biggest problem is actually it hurts our reputation because we can't get it done. Some divisions are bad for that. Mowing a lot of the year is a real big problem. Handyman's been a problem. Things like roofing and all kinds of ones. There's so much work around.
Yes.
So it's not usually a problem with us.
No.
Yeah. So Eric has said Ricky, who's a dog wash franchisee, who's just started, so 3 weeks, and she's already had 60 leads. So there's very rarely a shortage of work.
Sometimes the problem is they've got to learn to shut them down, because if they take the leads and just open themselves, they can get flooded and they start giving poor customer service, which has very bad implications in our system, because you get complaints and poor surveys. And then we've got to go in and say, okay, how many leads per day can you really cope with? And let's stick to that.
Although it depends on your approach. There's Dan Cahill, the mowing franchisee, who has never turned leads off. He just keeps them on and then just puts more people on. He just keeps scaling it to the leads, and he's done
some people can do that, but not everybody can, especially not in the beginning. So we love people like that, because
you've got to learn to walk before you run.
Yeah. Well, he was only in it 12 months, and so he, just went straight for it, did everything that the system told him to do, and he's done extremely well. So be like Dan.
Look, for those who've got that entrepreneurial drive and the ability, it's fantastic. Most people don't take on a lot of workers in their first 12 months. They just sort of get in the hang of things, and they'll gradually build up with time. It's very common, actually. In some regions, most of the guys have second trailers on the road. Yeah. I know in skip bins, quite a few of them have 2, 3 rigs, which and the rigs cost, you know,
big money,
big six-figure income. So, but they just make a fortune by doing this. So it does work.
Yeah, so that was another fantastic question. Another one we had here came through earlier in the week. What is your workflow? Which is a bit of an ambiguous question, but I'll take that to be, so how do you, if you have a new task, how would you start your approach to it? You've had a problem land on your desk. What's your steps involved to beginning it?
You talk to people about what's going on, fundamentally. Most of it's about communication. I find people that I can discuss it with. See what's happening here, why is this going wrong, or what do we need to do? So I get as much opinion as possible. And that's talking to staff members first, but also franchisors, anybody who knows about it. And then you just come up with the approach, and then you push it. And frankly, I don't believe you don't spend months cogitating about it. You come to the best solution you can, and you try something, and you see if it works. And if it doesn't work quite so well, you try something a bit different. So we do what Mark Zuckerberg used to talk about. You move fast and break things in a way. But sometimes the best thing is to make a decision of some kind. But I always change my mind. I often say, we'll do this. And then people come back to say, like, for example, just earlier today, somebody said, there's only 2 people booked in for franchise or training next week. And I said, okay, we really should cancel the training. And then the people got onto me and they explained somebody's come down from Townsville, which is a big flight, and all the flights booked, and the problems here, and what if we put the people in from effective franchisors and staff members and got them to train as well, so you'd have a better course. So after discussing it around, so I send out like an hour later an email saying, okay, it's all reverse, training's on. So sometimes you just got to make a decision, then change it if necessary.
One thing I think about you, Jim, that is apparent, and I don't have that skill, but when they talk about workflow, one thing that you do is you respond very quickly to emails. You answer them, but you don't worry about the format very much. You don't worry about the niceties of the way you say things. You just send an answer. Yeah. And it's a great skill, because you don't get a build. I can imagine you don't get a build up. You must deal with hundreds of things.
I regularly go through. That's why I got here down 2 minutes beforehand, because I was home doing emails. So every last email was finished. Everybody responds to, and then I come down, and poor Jake was just about getting a heart attack.
I was worried.
His first session, and Jim's not going to be here. Meet Jim, and there's no Jim.
That's a real skill, though, to do that. I've got a.
It's a real skill to terrify your staff, I suppose.
It is.
Yeah, he also has another method where just to get to the problem, he'll CC the person involved, and so he'll just if a problem comes in and it's someone else's, he'll just immediately CC them, and so you get an email from Jim, and you start to worry about what's going on, but you'll just
I know they complain about that, because often they think there's something that I should not share with the person being discussed, and I'll copy them, and I say, if you really don't want me to discuss it with the person involved, then tell me in an email, do not forward this in big, cold, bold, capital letters, and I won't do it. But my normal reaction is to copy anybody involved in the system, because I want to hear everybody's point of view before making a decision. And hopefully a joint one too.
All right, back into the live feed. Great engagement tonight, so thanks for everyone for commenting. Reno has gone, Jim, I heard a few years ago that you spoke to Dick Smith about adding a Jim's toy, small plastic Jim for each division, to his breakfast cereals. No. I know Dick Smith isn't doing much food stuff anymore, but did anything come out of that idea?
No,
a toy?
Never spoke to Dick Smith.
Never spoke to Dick Smith about doing a toy. Would you do a toy?
The next Coles giveaway.
Yeah, Jim's little shops, and have little trailers. Right, have a little mowing, dog wash. And
I think anything that's exposed the brand. If we could put little plastic Jim's gnomes into the breakfast food, I think it'd be fantastic. I mean, kids love it. Kids love the brand. I don't know why it is.
Choked on Jim. You know, would that be?
What does he choke on this time? It's a Jim's mowing trailer. Already have that one.
That antenna could get scratchy down there.
It's a funny thing. My kids are always talking about the Jim's memes going around the place. And I don't admit to being my children, which is embarrassing for them. But there's always the Jim's talk and the Jim's memes. The kids seem to love it.
I look at a lot of the social pages. They have an absolute fascination. There's one called Jim's Lawn Posting, where they just go around trying to take photos with all the different vehicles and trailers on the road.
People bring their kids to training. There's little, 5-year-olds and stuff, and they get to shake their hand and stuff like that. This Jim figure.
Yeah, I think
it doesn't look like me at all though. Where's the beard? Where's the hat?
Yeah. I think it's just so ingrained. Like I remember when I was a kid, I'd see Jim's ads on TVs. Like it's sort of just the branding.
It's iconic.
It's iconic. You always sort of know about it. It's always been there. It's which is why I think the younger generation.
The funny thing is, I'm incredibly famous, but I'm not nearly as rich as people think I am.
All right, so we'll go one more question, and the question that we had come in that was quite good, and I thought I would ask it to you, Jim. Was with the recent climate strikes, do you think that we will ever see change? While most of Australia's elites have large investments in coal. I know you talked about global warming and you talked a lot about nuclear power. But do you think that the reason that we've failed to go to it is because of a bias towards coal?
No, because not many Australians really care about coal very much directly. I do think elites are the problem to a large extent, but in a different way. For example, and I've talked about this in the past, and it's all in this, so I don't want to rattle on forever about it, but the way we handle climate change is wrong and destructive, because it does seem to have its main emphasis on enriching in the elites and impoverishing everybody else. So a typical example is how you discourage the use of carbon, how you develop alternative methods of power generation. Now what's happened is that you have, if you want to do it effectively, and this is pretty simple, this is The Economist or anybody else, what you do is you have a carbon tax. Carbon taxes are very efficient because then people use the most effective way to get the carbon down. Now that may be solar panels, it may be hydro, it may be wind, it may be turning off lights, it may be double glazing, it might be a stack of other things, but the carbon tax is by far the most cost-effective way of doing it. Now, you can have a carbon tax that was extremely fair, because what you do is you take the proceeds from the carbon tax and use that to compensate the people who've got lower incomes. So yes, your electricity price has gone up, but you actually get a fund to come for the government, so you actually end up with paying less. The people who pay most in that scenario would be the people like Harry and Meghan, who take private, trips in private jets while preaching about climate change, which is one of my bugbears. Okay, so in other words, that way you have an effective system which actually helps ordinary people, makes them better off, but screws the elites. Now, what do we actually do? We do the opposite. We have, okay, let's have a system that is less efficient, which is subsidising solar panels, much less efficient, massive government bureaucracy. But from the point of view of the elites, it's great, because if you're in a situation like someone like myself, you can afford to put the solar panels on your house, you get all the benefits. So the people who are wealthy and established get the benefits, and everyone else gets screwed with high power bills. So the elites are a problem, but not in the sense of coal generation, just because the whole system is designed to help the elites first and worry about global warming later, and it's less efficient.
Yeah.
And other things too, like and I don't want to go on about it again, but things like zoning regulations. Or around here, you've got 5-acre covenants. Why? Because millionaires like to have big estates, and they couldn't afford them if it was zoned for quarter acres. So it helps the elites, but it means that people have to drive hours and hours to get to work because they can't afford to live in the cities because housing is so unaffordable. So there's just so many ways that we could really help the environment, help ordinary people. But the elites have got a stranglehold on the media, on everything else, and they don't want these things to happen. So I think the elite point is good, but not quite to do with coal generation. Yeah.
Carbon tax wouldn't be very popular if you were running for a politician in the late 2000s, though. They didn't like it very much.
I couldn't give a stuff. But one of the problems about that is too, they've got to compensate people. Yeah. That's the problem that Macron did in France. He wants a carbon tax, but he said you can't put a tax forward that's going to hurt people who are struggling. Because, you've got somebody on a very minimum income, working family, they're really struggling to make it, and suddenly you're going to give them 50% more on their electricity bill. They can't afford to heat their houses, for example, or air conditioning in the summer, which is a real problem. You've got a mother with a couple of young children, and you can't afford air conditioning because the price of power's gone up. That's a real hardship for people. And I think we've got to consider such people when we do it. So if your carbon tax was properly compensated, I think it'd be popular. And what if I said to you, you're a struggling, well, you're not struggling, anybody here, I actually joke it because I pay virtually nothing. But if I said, okay, here's your electricity bill's going to go up by $100 a month, but I'm going to give you a check for 150, what would you say? Not bad idea. So there you are. Why not? Why not do that? And it's actually very efficient.
One problem
very
with the
fair.
concept of tax, what people don't realise, and it's an issue. You want to get into a political discussion now, but it's called a tax, but it's not really a tax, because when you're using fuel or you're using coal, you're actually creating a cost that is not expressed in the price, right? So that's the problem of the free market system. When you burn and put pollution into the air, there's no cost to you. You're not paying for that, but there's a cost to everyone else. So the notion of a carbon tax has a very negative sound to it, doesn't it? So that's where it hasn't worked. What's really interesting is, though, that with climate change, I was reading in Bloomberg today how gradually it's becoming, even in America, the majority of people are now concerned about it.
Yes.
And that's changed from just 6 years ago, where there was a big negative about the concept of climate change and the whole idea of it. So a lot of it is just the way scientists sell it. Scientists haven't been able to convince the average person that it's really a problem. And gradually, people, I believe, what will happen, and the young people, like that young girl, even though people get annoyed by her, that's an incredible thing that she's done. And the young people being aggravated is, in one sense, they're being told things that aren't quite true, but that movement of young people is going to have a massive political impact, and it's only politics that'll change it, isn't it? So yeah, I think it'll happen. The changes will occur.
If you want to hear more about climate change from Jim, we did a podcast last week. It's on the Facebook page or wherever you get your podcasts. We're coming up on 8 o'clock, so I've got one question left. All right, it's going to be quick fire. The last question is, if God exists, what would you like him to say to you when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Well, first of all, there's no if.
God exists. What would you like him to say?
Welcome in. I mean, I want.
That's if you get there, though. You're living forever.
But in a sense, I mean, this is from the theoretical viewpoint that God isn't talking to us now, and I think He is.
Yes.
I think God has a very definite message. I have a pretty clear sense of what God wants me to do with my life. And I know that's to do with things like using my money well to help other people, to make the world a better place. To me, that's a very clear message. Now, God doesn't necessarily speak like a voice in my mind, but there's a very strong sense. So in a sense, I don't think actually being at the pearly gates and being welcomed by Him would be any different, because I'm pretty sure I know what He already means to say to me.
Gotcha. Bit of an atheist over here, sorry.
Yeah. I'm a little bit the same.
Yeah.
What would he say? You didn't believe it, did you?
All right. So thanks for all those questions, and thank you for all that engagement on the feed. We'll do the books now. Jim, favourite question for the night?
I like the one about starting over. If you could start over.
That's a
great question.
Brilliant. That was Safi. Yep.
I'm going to say the elephant.
The elephant.
Though it did lead to some bad jokes. Maybe they should be penalised.
Maybe we should.
Listen, you have me on, you always get bad jokes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I had the same one, but the guy asked the issue about the business with the mortgage and
that was Warren. So okay. we'll contact you, Warren.
Yeah.
So we'll contact all those. We'll get Jim to sign those. Thank you everyone for watching the live stream. We'll be back again next week. Make sure to follow Jim at the Jim Penman. Thank you for David and Heidi coming on the show. I know you're a little bit nervous about it, and I was nervous as me.
They always are, these guests, but they
always into it. Everyone has a good time. All right, so we'll see you all next week. Thank you very much for your time. See you later.
Okay, see you later.
Thanks.
All right, we're fine. We didn't get a very good audience.
Yeah, that's where I wrote down, then I can remember.
We didn't get very good audience.
I'll check with Ben what the actual number was, because I think mine was towards.
He got frozen for a while on 37.